So hello everybody and welcome to our training webinar, an introduction to our 2019 Thesaurus Payroll Manager software. My name is Vicky and I'm joined today by my colleague Audrey. So the short webinar today is both suitable for those of you who are using Thesaurus Payroll Manager already and simply wish to familiarize yourself with the new 2019 processes, and also for those of you using our software for the very first time in 2019. As you can see from the agenda on screen, the sequence we will take you through will begin with how to firstly get started with the 2019 software, followed by us showing you the systematic steps you will need to complete to process your payroll each pay period. And we will then finish by showing you some of the additional processes you also need to be aware of in line with the introduction of POAE modernization. So we will get started. So the very first thing you will need to do is go and install the software. Now this is a quick and easy procedure, and once completed, we'll place an icon on your desktop for you to access the software going forward. On entering the 2019 software for the very first time, you will be presented with several options. And just to speed things up today, I already have the software installed, so I'll go into the software right now for you. Okay, so this is the screen that you will be greeted with the very first time you access the software. Now, if you are a new customer, several options are available to you to get up and running. Now, if you have previously been using Sage MicroPay or CallSoft or the Big Red Book, then we have dedicated import utilities for these packages, which will bring across your company and employee information from 2018 for you. Alternatively, you can set up your company from scratch, and to do this, you simply click the link shown here to access the Add New Company wizard, and all you need to do is follow the few steps and enter your basic employer information to set up your company. So I'll just press cancel there. Now, if you are an existing user of the software and your 2018 Thesaurus Payroll Manager is on the same PC, then we have a dedicated import utility for you, which will allow you to bring across your company and employee information from the 2018 version. So to do this, you are going to go to the File menu and Import Files from 2018. The first thing you need to do is select last year's location of your payroll software in this left-hand box. Now, by default, this will be the C drive and Thesaurus Payroll 2018. But if you do have your software for 2018 installed elsewhere, all you need to do is browse to this location using the drop-down menu here and by choosing the folder that your 2018 software is in. You will know that you're in the correct location because your company or companies will be displayed in this center box. Once displayed, you simply highlight the company you want to bring across. You have to do it one at a time if you do have more than one company, and click the right arrow. And you can see now that my employee details have been imported for ABC Limited here. So I'm going to click on OK. If you have more than one company to import, you simply repeat that process and so forth by clicking the right arrow. So I'm just going to close out now. So you'll see now that my company is added to my open company listing. And likewise, if you've used the company wizard to set up your company from scratch, your new company will appear here for you. So all you need to do is click on Open. Okay. Now I'm using the standard version of the software and it's looking for my unlock code now. So if you have already ordered the 2019 software and purchased an unlock code from us, you simply enter that in the field provided here at the top. Alternatively, with the standard version, you do get a free trial. You can process 3 weekly updates or 1 monthly update free of charge. So I'm just going to utilize that continue free trial button now. Okay, if you used the software last year and you've imported your information across, you now enter the same password that you used in 2018. And if you're a new customer, at the setup wizard stage, you will be asked to enter a password of your choice, and that will be the password that you enter here. So I'm going to click on OK. Okay. Now, just something to point out to you, especially for those of you using the software last year, if I do go into process icon number 1 here, which is where the employee records are held, if I just bring up an existing employee, one thing to note with POE modernization is that on import from the previous year, and likewise for any new employees that you set up in the software, your employees will be placed on emergency tax straight away. And if you click into revenue details here, you'll see that all my employees that I've imported across are on emergency basis. And this is because with POE modernization, employees have to start on emergency basis until such time that you've retrieved their tax credits and cutoff point information from revenue. And I'm going to be showing you that shortly. Okay, but that is a change on last year, just to be aware of there. Now with POE modernization is introducing 2 new processes. The first of these is the automated retrieval of revenue payroll notifications. And this is basically for you to retrieve all your tax credit and cutoff point information for each of your employees. So this information feeds down from revenue. And another process that is coming into effect in 2019 will be the submission of your payroll data, each payroll run to revenue. Now, for this 2-way communication to take place between Thesaurus Payroll Manager and revenue systems, your ROS digital certificate will be used. Therefore, the first task you will need to perform in the software before you can commence with processing any payroll is to add your ROS digital certificate into the software. Now, this is a once-off exercise, and it is important to note that you do need your digital certificate on the same machine as the software itself. Now, in the event that your digital certificate is not on the same machine as your payroll software, we do have guidance on our website if you need assistance with that. Now, as an employer, I've my company open here. So what I'm going to do to add in my digital certificate is go to File and Add and Renew Digital Certificate. And you'll see here that it states Employer Cert. I'm going to click into Employer Cert here. My next step is then to select the digital certificate for this employer. So I'm going to click on this link here and browse to the location of where my digital certificate resides. Now, the default location for an employer digital certificate is your C drive, your ROS folder, and a subfolder called ROS Certs. And I can see my digital certificate here. Now, in the event that you can't locate your digital certificate, you don't know where it is on your machine, then the file extension of the digital certificate is .p12. And so if all else fails and you're struggling to find it, you can always go into your search facility here, type in .p12 and see what comes up for you. Okay, so I'm going to select my employer cert here, click on Open. Okay, and I now need to enter the certificate password. So this is the password that you use when logging into your ROS account. So I'm just going to type this in here, click on OK. Okay, and a confirmation message is now confirming that my certificate has installed successfully. So I'm going to click on OK here. You can also perform a test connection here just to make sure that everything is working fine and that you're not going to have any problems retrieving your employee revenue information and also submitting your data to revenue. So you can click on test connection and just make sure everything is okay. And I can see that my connection is working fine. So I'm going to click on OK and press close. So I am now at the stage where I can commence processing payroll. So I'll now talk you through the steps involved in doing this, and it can be broken down into 5 steps actually for you. So I'll go through each step systematically. Step 1 will be to retrieve your revenue payroll notifications. So for each payroll run that you now perform in 2019, you will first need to retrieve the latest revenue payroll notifications for your employees in order to ensure the most up-to-date tax credit and cut-off point information is applied to their pay. So you'll see that each pay period, you will be given a prompt. You can see it here, process icon number 2. So you'll be given a prompt to import the latest RPNs before you actually process your employees' pay. So all you need to do is click into process icon number 2 to do this, and this will then automatically connect to revenue for you. And it will retrieve all available revenue payroll notifications for you, so RPNs for short. Okay. So you'll see here that a good number of RPNs have been retrieved for my employees and all displayed on screen. And if you wish, you can print the information displayed before you click on the update button. Once ready, you're going to click on update. Okay, and it tells me that my update is complete. So this screen now informs me what has happened. So I can see that I have 5 employees here for whom updated revenue information has been retrieved from revenue. Okay, and the employee records, so in process icon number 1, all this revenue information is now fed in, and those employees have been taken off emergency tax basis, and they now have their updated tax credits, cut-off points, USC rates, etc. in their employee record for you. Down the bottom, this is telling me that I have employees in the RPNs which cannot be matched to an employee record in my software. Now, this could be because I have brand new employees and I have not yet set up employee records for them. So what I can do is utilize this RPN utility to actually set up the employee records. This is also particularly useful if you are new to the software, and to avoid you having to go in and manually set up each employee you have individually. This is a very quick way of actually setting up employee records in one go. Okay, so do bear that in mind if you are new to the software in 2019. So I'll show you how you can do that. So I'm going to add all of these employees now into my software. So I'm going to click on add some or all of these employees to the payroll. Okay. The next screen then I'm presented with, I just need to indicate which pay frequency I want to put these employees on. So I'm going to say both, and I want to just put my first employee into weekly, and then I'm going to put everybody else into my monthly payroll. Yeah, and when complete, just click finish there. Now, that has now created employee records for me, and these employee records can be accessed by going to process icon number 1. Okay, sorry, my new employee there, here. Okay, now just one thing to bear in mind: if you do use the RPNs to set up employee records, obviously there's limited information in an RPN, so really it's only the employee name, address, PPS number, and their revenue information that's actually contained in that RPN. So that's all that the software can bring in. So you do need to bear in mind that if you have set up employees using the RPN, there might be further manual entry that is just needed. So for example, the employee's rate of pay, which can pop in here. For example, email address if you want to email payslips, for example. Also then if there's any additions and deductions you wish to set up, pension information, and so forth. So do bear that in mind, that you might just have to spend a little bit of time just filling in the gaps really in the employee records. Also as well, when you use the RPN to set up employees, the employee's pay method will be set to cash, and their PRSI class will be set to A1. And this information can obviously be changed as required if you need to. Okay, so I'm just going to update to save my changes to the employee. Okay, so that is step 1 completed. So I have retrieved my RPNs, and I know my employee revenue information is up to date. Now, step 2 is to now go ahead and enter your employees' pay information. If you are an existing user of Thesaurus Payroll Manager, then we have changed nothing in terms of this process. So simply do what you were doing last year by going into, say, weekly input or monthly input, and enter your employees' pay in the normal manner. Okay. If you are new to the software, I'll just run through the options available to you for processing your employees' pay. So there's 3 options available. First of all, there's periodic input. We also have quick edit, and we also have a net to gross facility as well. Now, the most commonly used of these is the periodic input utility, and this facilitates gross to net payments. And this one can be accessed using process icon number 3. Okay. And you can see I can select my employees from the drop-down listing. So all you need to do is work your way through the individual sections here. So my first screen here is where I enter my employees, I suppose, basic pay or hourly pay. So if they're paid by the hour, you can see this employee is here. Make sure their hourly rate is entered, and you simply enter the hours that they have done. So 30 standard hours here, you may have done 2 at double time, for example. Okay, if there's any additions you want to fill in, you can do so here. Again, I'll just use bonus as the example. Okay, any deductions. And when ready, if you're happy with everything, you just click on Update File to view the employee's projected payslip. So you can, it's just like a final check really, just to make sure you're happy with everything there. If I click back, I then select the next employee by clicking on Next. This is an example of somebody paid a weekly basic. And if I need to change it, I can do so here. And again, just make sure everything's entered and Update File. Okay, check the payslip, return to the screen, the main screen again, and click on Next. And repeat that for each employee accordingly there. Okay, so I'm going to close out that utility. Another option for entering your employee's pay is the Quick Edit facility. And again, this caters for gross to net payments and is designed again really to facilitate quick payroll input. This is accessed through process icon number 4. Okay. So you'll see that all employees in this utility are listed in report format. So if looking at their gross pay, you wish to change any of the employees, all you need to do is double click on their name. Okay, and you'll see it's very similar to the periodic input screen that we were just in. It's just that everything's on the one screen for you to see. So again, you can come in here and change as you need to. Okay, and click on OK. And again, just repeat the process as required for anybody else that needs amending. Okay, I'm going to close that one. The third option you have is if you need to perform a net to gross calculation instead for an employee. This option is available under the Payslips menu and net to gross projection. Okay, and if you need to use this utility, you simply select the employee in question, and this time you enter their desired net pay instead. So say I want them to have a take-home pay of 500, click on OK. The software will gross this up for you, so you can simply click on yes if you're happy to do so, check the pay slip and press close. Okay, and you continue again. So use any of those 3 options to enter your employee's pay. So once all employees' pay information is entered, process icon number 4, which is access to the Quick Edit facility, but process icon number 4 also serves as a final payroll preview for you. So if you just want a final look at everybody's information, just to make sure everything's okay, click into process icon number 4, check everything, and then press close when happy to proceed. So the next step is to finalize your pay period. Now, once your payroll data for the period is complete, you can update your pay slips. And you do this using process icon number 5. So this is my first update of the year. So I'm just given a little prompt to say, have you made sure you have, everything entered, any employee benefits and things like that. And I've also retrieved my RPNs. If I have, I'm going to click on yes to continue. And you'll see now that I'm given my update screen. So the information available here, first of all, you can see details of the last RPN that you imported. So that's in the top box. You can also see what your last update, the week or the month or the fortnight was for the last update that you performed, and also what the last pay date was. And obviously I'm at the start of the year at the moment, so that information is 0 and not applicable. And then you're given information of the period number that you're about to process. Now, for the very first time that you go into this utility, you will need to enter the pay date you require. The software doesn't know what your pay dates are initially, so it will always default to the computer's date. So it's just important just to change this date before you go any further. So I'm going to process with a pay date of the 7th of January here. Okay, if you're on weekly payroll, that will increment automatically then from week 2 for you, so you don't need to be typing in that pay date every pay period. An optional field if you are processing weekly payroll is now given at the bottom of this screen, and it's to include reference to the period that you're paying for. So often with weekly payroll, you can be paying in arrears. So just for information for the employee on their payslip, you can often just refer back and say, well, this was for period ending, I think, 31st of the 12th, 2018 here, and that will be referenced on the employee's payslip. And again, that will be incremental every time you update the payroll there. Okay, when ready to do so, I'm going to click on Update. Click on OK again, and it's now confirmed that my update is completed for week number 1. Okay, so I'm just going to click on OK there. Okay. The next step is then to submit your payroll data to revenue, and this is one of the new processes in 2019 that you won't have done before. Okay. Now, from the 1st of January, employers will be required to submit their payroll data to revenue every time they perform a pay run. And most importantly, this periodic submission will need to be received by revenue on or before payment is made to your employees. So you've seen now we've just updated a pay period. And what happens now is that Thesaurus Payroll Manager has automatically created the payroll submission I need to submit to revenue. And you'll see now that on process icon number 6, I am being prompted that I have a submission outstanding. So to therefore submit the periodic payroll submission to revenue, I'm going to click into process icon number 6, and I simply press Prepare PSR. Okay. On screen, I get a summary of the statutory deductions going through on this submission. So what, I get it broken down into PAYE, USC, PRSI, and LPT. I can view that file if I want, but if I'm happy with everything, I can simply submit the PSR to revenue. So this makes contact with revenue systems, and in a few seconds, we should get a response back to say the submission has been successfully received, and just to confirm that the total amount of taxes that were in the submission equals 76175, so it matches my little report up above there. Okay, so that's all there is to submitting your payroll data, so nice and quick for you. So I'm going to press close here. Now, after sending your payroll submission to revenue, you will be prompted to take a backup of your payroll data. If you used Thesaurus Payroll Manager in 2018, you'll know that this backup screen came up just as you were updating your pay slips. So we've moved it slightly to come up after you've submitted your payroll submission instead now. So that's just a slight change we've made. So what you need to do is just browse to where you would like to take your backup to. So we do always recommend that you take your backup to an external drive of some sort. So be it a USB key, a server, or a cloud environment, something like Dropbox, for example. So at least then if you have a PC breakdown or a crash, at least you have an external copy of your payroll that's nice and safe there. So we do recommend not backing up to the machine itself for those reasons. So I'm just going to choose my, I think it's J drive here, click on backup, and a confirmation here that my backup has been successful. Okay, so I'm going to press close here. It's worth pointing out here, if you are a user of Thesaurus Connect, which is an additional add-on to our software, instead of taking a backup at that stage, you can simply click the cloud icon, which is process icon number 9, and that will take a backup to Thesaurus Connect for you. Also, as you synchronize your payroll data through the cloud icon there, it will also upload your employee pay slips as well if you are availing of the employee self-service option that comes with Thesaurus Connect. Okay, so it does the two things at the same time for you. Okay. Now, the final step of your payroll process, each pay period, is simply to distribute your pay slips and to pay your employees. Okay, so after your pay period has been finalized and your payroll submission has been made to revenue, you can now distribute your pay slips. Now, should you wish to print your payslips, all you need to do is go into process icon number 7. Okay, and all the employees that were in that pay run will be displayed on screen for you. So the first thing you need to do is just choose your payslip type from the drop-down menu. So for printing, the most commonly used payslip type would be the 2 per page high resolution. So I just select that there now for you. You can then select individual names if you don't want to print everybody at the same time, or you can select all just to speed things up and press print, and that will send the payslips to the printer for you. Okay. Should you wish to email payslips to your employees, this can also be done within process icon number 7. However, before you can email payslips, you need to make sure an email address has been entered for each applicable employee in their personal details section in Add and Amend Employees. So I'll just pop out of that utility here, go into process icon number 1 to access my employee records, and I'll select my employee here. So you just need to make sure that you have your employee payslip entered here. We do recommend setting the password as well, especially with GDPR, and especially if you're if the recipient isn't in a secure environment when the email comes in. For example, click on update. Okay. I just enter one more just so I can show you. Okay, and close out. And you also need to make sure as well that you have an employer email address entered as well. This is so that the employer email address can be used as a reply to email address. So if the recipient wants to reply to the email that they've received with their payslip on it, then the address you enter will be used as that default reply to email address. And it also allows for the employee to receive a carbon copy of the payslips being sent as well. Okay, so to enter the employer email address, you're going to go to File, Amend Company Details, and just enter your employer email address here in the field provided. Okay, and again, this is where you indicate whether you would like to receive a carbon copy of the payslips or not, so you can actually switch this facility on or off. So I'm going to click on Save. So just to go back into process icon number 7, this is where you choose to email your payslips. So use the drop-down menu, choose Email Payslips. Okay, and in the box here, only those employees for whom you have email addresses entered will be displayed on the screen for you. So again, you can either select 1 or 2, if you want to send these individually, or you can select all. You then simply press the email button and click Yes to proceed, and that will then send the emails for you. Okay. They are pretty quick in arriving to the recipients, but at busy times, especially at month end, we do say just give it an hour just for those pay slips to arrive, because they're coming into our own email service and they get sent on from there. So month end can be very, very busy with monthly payroll and weekly payroll at the same time. So yeah, please do give it a little while for those to be received. Okay. So once you've distributed your pay slips, you can then go on to pay your employees. To do so, you can access under Reports, the Payroll Analysis section and Pay Method Summary. So this particular report is going to give you a breakdown of employees who are to be paid by cash, by check, or credit transfer. Now, for any employees who are to be paid by credit transfer, again, if you're new to the software, Thesaurus Payroll Manager does facilitate the creation of bank payment files for you to upload through your banking software. So this particular utility can be accessed under the Payslips menu, and you'll see here you've got bank payment file, including SEPA. Okay. Now that's for all banks apart from Ulster Bank, who have a facility called Bankline. So if you are an Ulster Bank Bankline user, you will just need to go into Bank Payment File Bankline instead in order to prepare the bank file you need. Now, we won't go into too much detail on how to prepare those bank files today, but again, in our online documentation on our website, we have the full guidance on the steps involved to creating and saving those bank payment files. So please do visit our website should you wish to have further information on that. Okay, so that is the 5 steps involved in processing your payroll every pay period. Of course, one of the final steps might be just to actually print or email your payroll summary, which can be accessed under process icon number 8 here. Okay, so that report is there should you require it there. Okay. So every pay period thereon, you are going to be repeating those 5 steps. So I'll just run through processing week 2 so you can see that all again. So just a quick recap for you. So the first step every pay period is to retrieve your RPNs. So process icon number 2. Okay, and I'm going to click on update. In this particular pay period, the software is detecting that there's no new credits and cutoff points found for any of the existing employees, so nobody's information has changed at revenue side. So I'm going to click on OK and close this screen. My next step is to process my payroll. So I'm going to use process icon number 3, but also remember you've got quick edit and net to gross projection. So again, I'm going to pop in here, update my employee information as required. Okay, click on update file, close. So I'm going to systematically work through each employee and enter their pay information. Number 4 then is a final payroll preview, just to make sure you're happy with the information you've entered. So once you're happy, press on close. And I'm then going to update my pay periods in number 5. So you'll see here that my pay date has incremented 7 days automatically for me, as has the period that is being paid for. So I'm going to click on update here. Okay, it's my update completed for week 2. Thesaurus Payroll Manager automatically now creates the submission that's required by revenue for me to submit my payroll data. So I'm going to click into process icon number 6, prepare the payroll submission, just make sure I'm happy with the figures and submit the PSR to revenue. I have confirmation back that my submission has been successfully received and the total amount of taxes in the return equals 55648. It matches, so I'm good to proceed. So I'm going to press close here. I'm going to take my backup, close this screen, and then I'm going to distribute my pay slips there. So once complete, and then I'm ready to pay my employees. So again, if you're paying by credit transfer and you want to utilize the bank payment file facility in the software, your final step will be to go to Payslips and choose the relevant bank payment file option here. Okay, and that is the process you'll be going through each pay period. So I will now pass you over to my colleague Audrey. She's just going to show you now some of the additional processes you do need to be aware of in line with the introduction of POIE modernisation. So thank you, Audrey.
Thanks very much, Vicky, and hello everyone. So we're just going to talk a little bit about starters, so new starters, new employees. So from the 1st of January 2019, employers will no longer be required to submit a P45 Part 3 or a P46 to revenue to register a new employee. So instead, to commence a new employment, an employer will now submit a revenue payroll notification, or an RPN for short, for the new employee. This will create the employment on revenue side, and revenue will send an RPN response back into the software advising of the tax credits and cut-off points, etc., to be applied to that employee. The employee start date then will be included in the first payroll submission that you make for the employee. So I suppose in order to make this happen, the first thing you need to do is just to set up the employee, so to create an employee record for this new starter. So I can simply click on my process icon number 1. And just click on new there, just to, I suppose, tell the software this is a new employee. So my first tab here is personal details. So I enter in the personal details for this new starter. Okay, so enter in as much information as you have, address, date of birth, etc. Just literally everything you have for them, just for the purpose of today, and I suppose just to speed things up. I'm just going to put in the name and the PPS number for the employee. Okay, so once the personal details are complete, I can now click into revenue details, which is my next step. And the employee will automatically be placed on emergency tax until they are updated by an RPN. So my first thing here is just to enter in the employee start date. So I'm entering the 18th of January 2019, and I must enter in a PSI class then. That's a mandatory field for the new employee record. So if I know the PSI class, I can select it using the drop-down arrow. If I'm unsure of the PSI class that should be linked to the employee, I can click on for help with class, click here, and it will prompt me then as to what the PSI class should be. So I know my PSI class is A1, so I'm simply going to select that using the drop-down arrow. Okay, so I'm happy that everything there under revenue details for the moment is correct. If I wanted to add in any additions or deductions, pension, anything like that, I can click through the different tabs then to complete that. And also then the HR details and CSO section should be completed as required. So when I'm happy I have everything in for that employee, I can click on update then just to complete the employee record and save it. Okay, so the employee has been updated successfully. So when I close out of this utility, you can see that I have a prompt now in my process icon number 2. So the software is telling me that I should send an RPN request to revenue in respect of this new employee. Okay, so to do this, I can simply click on my process icon number 2. The software will automatically connect to the revenue system and attempt to retrieve an RPN for the employee. Okay, now an RPN response can only be received from revenue for an employee where a PPS number has been provided. So details of the response will be displayed on screen, okay, and I can click on update then to apply the credits and cutoff points that are shown. Okay, so I then get, I suppose, confirmation that the employee has been updated with the new revenue information. Okay, so you can see the details up here for this new employee. Okay, and I can click on update then just to complete, just to say just confirm that that's done. Okay, and close out of this utility. Okay, so I can then proceed just to update the payroll as required. So into my payroll or the process icon number 3. Okay, so I can enter in the pay for this employee and any other amendments that I need to make for any other employees. Okay, so when I'm happy then I update the payroll as normal. Okay. Okay, so update complete. Okay, so I am now prompted to send the PSR to revenue, and that will report the employee start date to revenue. So on receipt of that submission, revenue will then have a copy, or I suppose confirmation of the employee's start date with the employer. Okay, so we'll just submit that. Okay, so let's just check in with revenue. So you can see the confirmation there, so submission successfully received, and it's just confirming the total amount of taxes returned in that submission. Okay, so nice and straightforward, I suppose, to to look after new employees going forward, much easier than all the P forms, I guess. So just then I suppose to talk about leavers. So likewise from the 1st of January 2019, employers will no longer be required to issue a P45 to an employee and submit the P45 Part 1 to revenue. So instead of that, an employee's leave date will be reported to revenue in the final payroll submission made for the employee. So to process a leaver in Thesaurus Payroll Manager, you will now enter their leave date at the time of entering their final payment to them and before you update the pay period. So to perform this task, you simply click on your process icon number 3, okay, and select the employee that's leaving employment using the drop-down menu. Okay, so you should just review, I suppose, the details that are there for the employee and just ensure that they are the correct, the correct payments, etc., for that last payslip, that final payslip for them. So I tick to indicate that the employee is leaving. Okay, so I get a message then asking me if leave date is part of, I suppose, this current pay period. So it's the employee leaving during this pay period. So if the answer is yes, I can simply just say yes to that. But if there is a further payment owed to the employee or a non-taxable lump sum, etc., I can click on no, and there's a separate step then to do that just under the Payslips menu to process a final payslip. Okay, and just a message there just to say that, employees no longer receive P45s. Okay, so it's defaulting a leave, it's I suppose pre-populating a leave date there. So if that is the correct leave date for the employee, you can leave it. But if that leave date is incorrect, you should change the leave date then, I suppose, to the correct leave date. Okay. So I'm happy there that that's all the correct information for that final payslip, including the leave date. Okay. And I can just update the payroll then as normal. Okay, so there's a PSO submission there to send to revenue, and that ensures the employment record with revenue has been updated or will be updated as soon as we send it, just to reflect that the employee has left that employment, and the leave date then will be reflected on that employee's record on revenue side. Okay. So in the event that you need to issue a mid-period final payslip, or as we mentioned, the employee needs to get a taxable lump sum on termination, or even a non-taxable lump sum, so anything that's outside of the normal pay run, we have a dedicated facility to deal with that, and that's under the Payslips menu and process final payslip for employee leaving. So similar, I guess, to the last menu item, you just select the employee that's leaving the employment, okay, and you say yes to indicate that you need to make further payments to that employee. And next, so it's bring you into a screen there when you can put in the payments that are still due to this employee. So, for example, the taxable lump sum on termination, okay, and enter in the date of leaving and just proceed with that. And that will also create a PSO then, or a payroll submission request for revenue, indicating that the employee is leaving the employment. And there will also be a final payslip available for the employee for printing or emailing using the process icon number 7. Okay. So I suppose corrections, we all recognise that there will be corrections required at times for payroll submissions that have been sent. So much in all as we want to avoid corrections, I suppose they will happen. So corrections are handled via the corrections menu. So you can see here the corrections utility, and there are 6 correction types or menu items available. So they are do it all again. So this is where the payroll has just been updated. So the pay period you have literally just updated, the last pay period. So it could be a case that the employees have not yet been paid, but perhaps you had, I suppose, omitted to put in overtime or something. So this allows you just to do that payroll again. So a new employee. So this is for a payroll that's previously processed where you weren't aware that an employee had started. So you can now enter in a new employee record with the correct start date, and even though it's in the past, the system will then allow you to put in payments that have been made to that employee. So this is without impacting that payment period that has, or those payment periods that are already finalized. So payment was different. So this facilitates a correction to a previous pay period for individual employees. So you may just have one employee there for one pay period, and for whatever reason, the system is reflecting, a different amount of what the employee was physically paid, which means that the amount that was reported to revenue was also incorrect. So that facilitates their correction for that situation. The next correction type then is wrong PPS number. So again, in relation to a previously processed period, there was a wrong PPS number for an employee. I suppose that should be rare enough, but we have catered for that. Wrong PRSI class then. So again, if this payslips period's already finalized, but the PRSI class that was used for an employee was incorrect, this allows you to correct that, again, without having, without impacting any other employee. So you're correcting just the employee or just the individual that's incorrect. And then finally, the last correction type is employee has left. So this, again, is for a payroll that was previously processed and you weren't told or you weren't aware that an employee had left the employment. So this, again, is a correction type that needs to be done then with revenue. So we can have a look at some of those correction types now. So firstly, we look at do it all again. I suppose I've tried to pick out the ones that we feel maybe will be used more often. So if we click on do it all again, so this is recognizing that the last week that was updated was week number 4. Okay, so I can just click on reverse last update. Okay, you have successfully reversed your last update. So the system will recognize if a payroll submission has been sent to revenue, and it will know then if a correction submission is required to be sent. If the submission wasn't sent, then a correction submission would not be required. Okay, so I'm just going to say okay to that. So it's prompted me there just to submit that correction submission. So really that would delete the submission on revenue side and then allow you to submit the correct one then when you redo the payroll again. Okay. So the next correction type we'll take a look at there is payment was different. So this could be, for example, you maybe were told an employee received a certain amount into their hand, but actually it was a different amount. So when we click on payment was different, we've got a selection of the week numbers that have been updated on the payroll and also all of the relevant employees. So if I take, for example, Craig, okay, so we'll say that it was his week 3 pay slip that was incorrect. So there's a taxable pay slip there. It shows you what was existing, you know, what has been put through on the system and reported to revenue. So the taxable pay period there is 750. So if we say, for example, that actually the net pay was 750 and not the gross. So on my correction side here, I have an option to put in either a net pay figure or a gross payment figure. So I'm going to pop in that 750 and click on calculate net to gross. Okay. So this will now give me the corrected payslip details. So before I apply it, I can check them and make sure that everything looks okay. So I'm happy there that it was the 750 of a payment or a net pay that I wanted, and I can see that that's coming through for me there. Sorry. So I can just click now on apply correction, okay, and close. And now I have an outstanding submission, so a correction submission that should be sent to revenue now, just to reflect that change that has been made on the payroll. Okay, so also then under the corrections menu, I suppose the next most common type we would feel would be that an employee has left. So you weren't told that an employee had left the employment. So if the employment has left, but this wasn't entered on the payroll or reported to revenue. If payments were mistakenly recorded for that employee, so you weren't told that they had left, they haven't actually physically been paid, but you weren't told, so you've assumed they were getting the same payment and that's been reported to revenue. In that case, before you make the employee a leaver, you would have to do payment was different to zeroize those payments that are incorrectly recorded and reported to revenue. But for now, we'll just use an example of an employee where it's just the leave date that needs to be reported and the payment record is correct. Okay, so when you click on this menu, it will tell you what you need to do. So it's telling me here that I need to choose process final payslip in the payslips menu and enter in the date of leaving. Okay, and it does prompt me there for the situation we spoke about a moment ago, where in some instances you would need to use payment was different also. Okay. So if I go to the payslips menu and process final payslip for employee leaving, so I choose the employee that's leaving, and I said this is somebody whose payment record is correct. I simply just need to report to revenue that they have actually left the employment. Okay, so I'm going to pop in the date of leaving. So say it was the 19th of January 2019. Okay, and next. Okay, so it's just telling me the date is after today's date, which is fine. Okay, next. So please confirm that the employee is leaving. So yes to continue or no to go back. So this, I suppose, is my point where I just make sure that what I have on my system here is correct. So that is the right employee. And even if I just want to double check that that date of leaving is correct. So I'm happy that that's all right. So I'll just say yes then to continue with that. Okay, so the final payslip with 0 values has been included in the PSR, is ready to be submitted, and just say okay to that. So that's all in the PSR then, ready to submit to revenue. Okay, so just now I suppose just to speak about revenue payments. Okay, so firstly just to confirm there is no change to revenue payment due dates. The payment arrangement that an employer currently has with revenue will remain. So for example, if an employer is paying revenue quarterly, that payment agreement will continue. Okay. Regardless of the payment due date, Revenue will issue a tax monthly statement based on the periodic submissions an employer has made to them. So, for example, in January, you've made maybe 4 weekly submissions. Revenue will generate a tax monthly statement based on those 4 weekly submissions. So they will accumulate those figures and generate a tax monthly statement. So we do have a report on the system that allows you to reconcile with the Revenue monthly statement. Okay, so under the reports menu, we have a range of reports available. But what we're going to look at is a report under tax details, and that's monthly, quarterly details. Okay. So this report will show the liability both monthly and quarterly for Revenue. And this should always match the statements issued by Revenue. We do have a handy utility here, which allows, the software is basically just checking with ROS, it's checking the Revenue system and retrieving the tax liability that they have on record for you. And this will reassure you that both Revenue and the payroll are matching. So clicking on that Check ROS utility will then populate this line here with what Revenue have on their side for you. And it would be extremely unusual for those not to match. So you should always expect, I suppose, to see that they are matching. Revenue will issue their tax monthly statement on the 5th of the following month. So, for example, the 5th of March for the February, for February's submissions. So you can accept the submission. If you don't accept it, they will deem to be accepted unless you send a correction submission. So whatever they issue, as I said, it's available for accepting, but if you don't accept, you do nothing, they will deem it to be accepted. Now I should just mention that depending on the payment method you may have with ROS or with Revenue, you may still have to log into ROS and authorize the payment to them. So because I suppose you're sending everything through the payroll software and retrieving from the into the payroll software from Revenue, you may, I suppose, get into the habit of not logging into ROS and doing, having to do something. But if you are, for example, on a ROS debit instruction, even if you agree with the statement and Revenue, deem it to be accepted, you will still need to log in and just authorize that payment to them. Okay. So that's really everything to show you there, I suppose, in the typical steps involved in the payroll. If you do have any questions, feel free to email support@thesaurus.ie. We do have, I suppose, further guidance available for you. So we have online documentation available at thesaurus.ie. We also have some video tutorials, the email address that I gave you there for support, and the number then for telephone support. So plenty, I suppose, of further guidance for you there.
Great. So thank you, everybody, and for your time today. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.